So today I want to introduce you to Jimmy Kim from Earthling Foods. He is the co-founder, and we are meeting on this beautiful, sunny February day. Welcome, Jimmy.
Thank you so much for having me.
We did lots and lots of coaching around pitch and plate, which was a lot of fun. And so I kind of like to, because it's the Heart of Food and Beverage, I kind of like to get into a little bit more about what we talked about, just about what it was like for you starting a business and all that sort of stuff. So, so welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Such a lovely studio, and just happy to be here on this such a beautiful day.
Yes, it is. It's an absolutely beautiful day. So Jimmy, when we talked, when we were doing the coaching, there was it's a funny thing because when I'm doing the coaching for Pitch and Plate, also what ends up happening is I end up not stalking people on Instagram or on LinkedIn, but I do. It tends to be that I just tend to read more of their posts and, you know, things that they're talking about and thinking about and stuff. And so I just noticed there was a number of posts that you had done when you, you know, around that time. And I feel like it's a little bit of a hot topic at the moment, which is what's happened south of the border around the tariffs, but also them stopping their diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you had posted about, you know, how it was challenging for you starting a business and being in business and how you felt about that. And so I just wanted to know how you feel now with just, I mean, even, I know it's not in Canada that's happening, but it is happening in the US. And so it must feel uncomfortable a little bit to hear things like that it's, you know, not as important to people or they want to tear it down or how do you feel about all that?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, just to give you a quick background, I grew up, you know, we immigrated in 2001. We lived in BC for like 4 months. Then we moved to Manitoba. So I kind of grew up in Manitoba and Alberta. So it was a very different environment than the 4 months that we had in BC. Even back then, we still had like small Korean grocery stores. We had lots of other Korean people and a bit of a Korean community. So I always felt a little bit more safe. And then, you know, closer to home in a different country. Then we moved to Manitoba, and we were the only family of color, basically, in a town of like 800 people. Everybody had like everybody knew each other, so I kind of grew up there, and it was actually quite nice. You know, it's a small town, and I didn't really know like had a concept of race or anything like that when you're that young.
Right.
Then I moved to like Alberta, and then that was like a bit of a different culture. And I'm not saying like it were, you know, I had a pretty challenging like early high school years with some of that, and I still remember it to this day. Like you know, just some of the, I wouldn't say like I would actually call it like pretty racist remarks when I was growing up, and not that it affected the way I conducted business in BC, but some of those things kind of still stay with you. And you get a bit of a chip on your shoulder, I think, as an adult, and say, "Hey, like, I wanna prove those people wrong. I wanna be a positive mark in society, and I want to do better." And you know, to be honest, I'm not following U.S. politics as much as some people, and about DEI and things like that. But you know, I do know that all the challenging stuff that I grew up with became positive things when I became older, and gave me more grit, tenacity, and the chip on the shoulder. And I think that's, as an entrepreneur, the more of that you have in kind of a almost like a perverse way, like more of that you have, the stronger it makes you.
It makes you more resilient, right?
Yes.
Like I think it makes you more resilient, and you know, it's a saying that I used to say not that often, and now I feel like I'm saying it every other hour. That often in the bad is the good. right? These things that we see as challenges and adversity actually help strengthen us, give us that resolve, right? That, that we really need. And because I don't think life is getting any easier, right? It's not, No. So I'm glad to hear that it actually has helped you kind of in business and I'm sure in life as well.
Absolutely.
That's really neat.
Yeah. Also, like, just to add to that, I did have a bit of a corporate career before business, and speaking to my other peers and some mentors who are, immigrants or people of color, and a pretty common thought from them is like, hey, I don't want to, and they're, let's say, in a higher place in a corporate setting, and they would share with me, it's like, hey, I don't want people to think that I'm here just because I'm this background. Right. And that's also a different set of mental challenges, because like you could have a doubt in the back of your mind, like, hey, what if I'm just here to be a token person here, right? And none of us want to feel that way. So we want to get there by merit, really, and by really getting what we deserve, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I just thought I should kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can relate to this because I'm a woman.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it happens to women too, right? Like where, I mean, certainly when I was in my career, there would people say like, well, how did you get there? Why are you there? And it wasn't a nice feeling to think that people were thinking thoughts about, how I got there, right? It just was like, well, what about hard work? Like, what about I deserved it? So I know it's tough, right? When there's this set of parameters that you're kind of like, well, some people might think this about me, right? They might feel this about me, which is not a great feeling. But then all the more great that you have your own business and you don't even have to think about that, hopefully. I mean, you're just, it's you that you're, it's you that you're having to
battle every day.
That's right. That's right. But what I thought was really neat when we were first talking and coaching together, I really wanted to highlight your mom because it sounds like your mom is a force to be reckoned with. She brought you two over here, right? You and your sister over here. And how old were you at the time?
I was 8 years old.
And your sister was how old?
11.
11. Okay. So an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old to Canada. So, and she speak English.
She didn't speak an ounce of English.
I know. And so, the journey a lot of times for newcomers is they will come to Canada and they will have, a good background. They might be a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer, or whatever, and they can't practice here. And they literally end up cleaning or childcare or whatever.
Food service.
Your mom, she went to school, right? And tell us some more about her.
Oh, she's such I'm very proud of my mom, and I love talking about her story. So she actually, we moved here in 2001, and my dad was still doing his business in Korea, and he had a very successful business there, and then it just absolutely tanked. And through so many different reasons, the economy and a bunch of different reasons, and basically he was stuck there by really not being able to afford to relocate to Canada. And then my mom, I told you we lived in BC for a little bit.
Yeah.
She realized, okay, I can't stay here. I can't stay in BC. I gotta get further education. And she decided to pursue clinical therapy. The reason she decided to do that was she suffered from panic attacks. When we found out my dad's situation, could you imagine, you're here with 2 kids, and then we're finding ourselves in financial ruin, and then she had a lot of mental challenges there.
Oh wow!
So she was suffering from panic attacks, and it was still relatively a new thing, right? And in Canada at that time, there were no Korean therapists.
Right.
So with her language barrier, what can she do? right? So we actually moved back to South Korea. Like we had to like sell everything. I remember still like moving out our furniture because we had to sell everything. And then we moved back to Korea and she recovered. And after recovering, she was like, I'm going to pursue clinical therapy. I want to help people like myself who went through that. Fast forward, we're in Manitoba. She decided to learn English. At age 39, she was. And then she put herself through school. She went to Providence Seminary in Manitoba and eventually got her master's, then became a registered clinical therapist. And now she has a practice. And
that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And how amazing for you to have a mother like that, right? I mean, talk about resilience.
Yeah. So whenever I feel bad about my situation, I think about those days and hey, like I speak the language, I'm healthy still, and I have, a beautiful wife that supports me. Yeah. Like I got everything in the arsenal. So, why would I feel bad about anything?
And you've got a great example, right? You've got a great example of someone that has shown you that you can overcome a lot of adversity, right? I think I really feel that's something that's important in all of that is that when you have that, it's, I think that's really important. She didn't fall apart. She actually was able, right, to really make a success of something. And again, in the bad is the good, right? Yeah. She had panic attacks. And so this gave her the impetus to actually study and to help other people overcome this. So what a wonderful story. Wow. Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about your business because I know that, so talk a little bit about your sister. I want to hear about your sister because that's who I met first, actually, before even you.
Yeah.
And she's a co-founder.
Yes. Yeah. So my sister and I, we actually got into business together with a company called Boba Cabana.
Okay.
And it was, we were inspired by a company called Boba Guys in San Francisco. And their take was high quality bubble tea that are made with as much natural ingredients as possible and just more attention to detail. And we just really liked that idea and we wanted to do something like that in Vancouver, right. And especially in our neighborhood, which was Westminster. My sister and I are like polar opposites.
Oh, really?
In many ways.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, I can be very like optimistic, unrealistic, and, like ha hooray kind of personality. Whereas she's a bit more realistic. She's cautious, and in those ways, like we're very complementary, and we hold each other accountable. Would I recommend people go into business with your siblings? That's a tough one because, as like, if I think back and like really do a realistic take on it, it's like, would I go into business with my sibling now, with both of us getting married, her having a baby? It's like, it's a tough answer. I still don't know if that was the right call. But I do know that we wouldn't have as much success we did right now without each other.
That, yeah.
Yeah. And that's facts. Yeah.
Well, it's good. I think it's also good to have opposites, right? That you've got, that's the same with me in my business. I have Megan who's cautious, and I'm like you. I'm like, let's go. Let's do it. Yeah. She's like, wait a minute. So I understand that. But I do think in a way you need that because you need someone to be like, okay, now what's the ABC of what we're going to do? And we can all day long come up with shiny objects to run after, right? It's not a problem for us.
Yeah.
So you always need people that are more kind of operationally minded, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing. I know it's hard to be in business. I was in a family business when I grew up with my family, and it's not easy. It's not easy for sure. Yeah.
But then, you trust your family more than anyone. So that's another, the pros of it. Yeah.
That's true. And so, so a little bit about your products. So you have your dacrons, which maybe explain to the folks that are watching what a dacron is. I certainly know what it is because I love them, but you explain.
Yeah. So dacrons, it's our take on a product called dacquoise. And dacquoise is a French almond meringue, and it's traditionally a layer cake from France, and then in Japan they decided to make it into these like egg-shaped macaron style desserts, and it just kind of exploded in South Korea at the time when COVID, like right before COVID, it just exploded, and my wife loved them, Jessica, and she just absolutely loved them, and she said, "Hey, can you make me this?" Right? If I go to we were doing long distance because we were separated with COVID.
Yeah.
And she asked me, "Hey, if I go to Canada, can you make me this?" And this is when our bubble tea shop was shut down, and I said, "Yeah, I'll try making some." And I made it, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I realized, hey, this freezes really well.
Yeah.
It's got a 14-day shelf life in the fridge. And these are it hit all the boxes for a cafe owner at that time. And, bubble tea cafe owner. And so we decided to sell it in store.
Nice.
Sold very well. I sold it to my friends' stores who owned cafes in the area. Yep. Then we just, obviously we were shut down. So we decided to sell to the 6,000 followers that we had on Instagram. Then that picked up, and then, I was driving around everywhere every day delivering. This is when everybody was into online ordering.
Right.
Then we had an Instagram message from a buyer at TNT. And that was our entry into retail. Before that, we weren't in any retail stores.
That's a pretty good entry into retail.
Yeah, we got lucky.
Wow.
She saw like one of our products, and she said, "Hey, like we're interested in bringing this in for TNT."
Yep.
I didn't know that they would do the volume that they did, which was like insane amount of volume for us at the time. Then that essentially engaged us into retail and thinking, hey, this is a viable business for wholesaling and retail. And that's when we decided to move forward into that business. Yeah, before then, it was sort of like a hybrid between, Instagram bakery and cafe wholesaling. Yeah.
And you came to the from the ground up trade show. I remember that, when we first went to the forum at the P&E.
We were so young and so didn't know.
That's when I tried it for the first time, and I was like, "This is the best thing I've ever eaten. This is ridiculous." I had no, and it also gluten free, right? So
it's gluten free.
Yeah.
It's traditionally made with cake flour.
Yeah.
But we use sweet rice flour for it to make it gluten free, and we actually found the texture is kind of nicer, so it's accidentally gluten free.
Yeah.
I never lead with it being gluten free because people have a stigma about it too.
Right, that it's not going to really taste good, or it's going to be whatever. It's going to have a weird flavor or whatever. I know. I tried the product. I didn't know it was gluten free, and then I think you said to me afterwards, after I ate it, and I was like, "What?"
Yeah. Like every buyer we meet, we never say it's gluten-free.
You never say it, and then they eat it,
and then
you
we
tell
say,
them.
"Oh, it just happens to be that." And then they're like, "Oh, great."
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I guess one thing I'd like to ask you is around this whole, with everything that's kind of happened around the local movement too. What is that? How do you think that's going to impact your business?
Yeah,
with local, just with everything that's happening with the tariff threat.
So far, on shelf, not like I'm not noticing it.
Yeah.
I think with buyers' decisions, it's gonna make a big impact, and the more we talk about it, the more it's on the news. I think it's a good thing. I think for Canadian manufacturers, like we always have our Made in Canada and Buy BC logo on all of our packaging,
right?
Which is great, because how else would people know,
right? Exactly.
And so I'm hoping that this will lead to people not just reading the made in Canada, but just reading the labels as a whole, right? People don't spend very much time reading labels in the grocery stores, or else it'll be there forever.
Right.
But it's nice to get a second look from customers. If they're looking at, oh, this is by BC, let's look at the ingredient deck.
Right.
And they find how clean of ingredient deck that we have, or how great the nutritional deck is. I think these are all positive things. And I did mention it on, my posts, like saying, hey, like this is good because people are going to read the ingredient labels more. Or eventually. So just by reading.
I think that's true, actually. I think you're right. I think it is making people focus on the actual packaging more.
Yeah.
Which, of course, we have never seen traditionally. It's, this is what I teach. It's like people spend no more than 6 seconds, right? That's about the most you'll ever see someone, perusing a label.
Yeah.
And so now probably more so, with the changes, I think they're going to be looking for that. Hopefully the retailers will start really marking the products that are products of Canada or made in Canada, or whatever the various iterations of that are. I think it's so important to think about that recirculation of funds, especially within our province. That's why we always sort of talk about local first. And when we say local, we mean the border of BC, because it does create such great prosperity within the province for us to really stay as local focused as possible. Yeah. And then Canada, like trying to kind of really still get that focus from the folks here.
True. Yeah.
I'm always curious what folks are going to, what they think is going to happen in the coming months, and whether it will impact you with packaging and ingredients and all those sort of things, and what will encourage people, even though, there are going to be probably increases and things like that around packaging costs and ingredient costs, to still continue to support, because it's going to hurt, right? It's going to hurt.
Yeah. My hopes, and maybe I'm a little bit pessimistic about this, is like, I hope that certain suppliers and certain distributors don't decide to use this as an opportunity to raise their prices,
like COVID.
That's my thought, and I really hope something like that doesn't happen. And I'm sure like certain things will go up. If this continues, like we use almond flour, which, like, where in Canada can we grow almonds?
Right.
So I think we will see price increase if this goes through.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
Even if
I kind of think that
try
too,
to do everything as local as possible, our eggs and dairy, but like almonds. You can't get around.
There are things you are not going to be able to get in the province of BC, right? That, or even in Canada, that you're going to have to get in other places, and probably the States. Yes.
Yeah. Like even our oats, like we do granola, and our oats come from Canada, like gluten-free oats. But that the supply of that for us, for whatever reason, has been like really up and down too. So, not that we're going through that much, but I could see, like, if we were to grow that business, if I'm experiencing that as a small business with, minimal amount of bags, how would it affect me if I have to go through pallets of these, right? And supply issue is a real thing that we deal with every day.
Yeah. I know it's going to be challenging, but I really hope that the folks that are listening to this podcast, and also just in general, as we talk more and more and more, on LinkedIn and in other podcasts and whatnot, that it really gets through to people that we are going to have to probably pay some more to support Canadian products, but just the level of importance of that is just, very important.
I hope people realize, like, everything that they buy, like, the people, it goes to the people who make it, and it goes to the staff that make it, the everyone from the QA to your operations to your line workers, and they, it's really full circle, right?
It sure is. And I love Local BC has a stat that we've borrowed on more than a million occasions, that 14 cents, if you are buying from a multinational, 14 cents gets recirculated into the economy
Wow.
14.
Wow.
Not very much.
Yeah.
And it's something like, 86% gets recirculated into the economy when you buy product from here.
Yeah.
So, that one really impacted me a lot, like with my purchasing decisions. And for sure, my grocery bill's gone up because I am literally looking at every single thing I buy. And if it's local, I'm like, I want to support them.
Yeah.
And so for sure, for sure it has. But, it's a small price to pay.
That's
to not be a 51st
state. I had a conversation about this too, like 51st state, and there's a good amount of people who support that. That's surprising. Yeah.
That want it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they don't, I guess they don't think about
I'm not going to call them out on this.
Yeah, I guess they don't think about their health care or a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've worked for an American company, so I can tell you that it's very different, the work, just the way that we work here and the way that we are with our employees here is very, very different than they are down there. So I think if you worked for an American company, you would have a very different opinion of that. It's very different here. It's very different.
Is it just...
they just don't have the same... ethics. Like they just don't have the same work ethic. They don't have that. They think you should work all the time. They don't take time off. They don't give women that go on mat leave don't get more than a couple weeks off. It's really not great.
Yeah.
So all those of you who want to be a 51st state, have fun. I lived it, so I know. Yeah. But we have it really, really, really good in Canada, and I want to keep it that way.
Yeah. Same here. Yeah. We like Canada. Yeah.
All right. Well, any final last things you want to say before we end this, Jimmy?
Yeah. I guess, because the tariff talk has been such a big topic and, who knows what's going to happen. I think Trump just announced like he is going to go through with the tariffs on the steel and aluminum, right? Mm-hmm. At least that's what I read this morning. And if, if he continues on and I think we just got to draw from the positives. I'm a positive person and I want to keep the dialogue positive. So if we can try to support local as much as we can but also like help each other, right? And I think that's one thing I really enjoy about the lunch room, and also
great.
A big shout out to that.
Yeah, thank you for the shout out. We probably should explain what that is. The lunchroom is a group of 11 food and beverage processors that are a little further along in their journey. They're not in the startup phase. They are further along, and they come together and learn tools, of how to manage their business better. But they also have a beautiful connection with one another, and they can support one another. And I think that's probably what you're referring to. Is this lovely network and of colleagues, right, that you can draw from.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, being kind and so respectful and sharing as much as we can, right?
Yeah.
And also just knowing like we all go through the same challenges. And it's funny, like everyone, like you probably see it from a different lens. Like everyone has very similar challenges.
Yes.
And everyone wants, at the end of the day, we all want more sales. We all want smoother ways to scale our operations. And then health and safety audits. These are all, like every single manufacturers go through the same challenges, even if you're making like macarons or non-alcoholic beers. Everyone has the same set of challenges. Yeah. And it's kind of nice and comforting to know that. And that, I really enjoy the lunchroom and just learning from there.
Oh, thank you.
I couldn't make it to the last one, but
that's okay. That's okay. I really appreciate you talking about that, because I do think it was something that when I was a processor, it was probably one of the most challenging things for me. Was it felt very lonely, and it felt very much like I wanted to be able to trust a group of people that I could talk to and tell them what was going on, and that they would understand, and that they would probably be going through the same thing. And so it's wonderful to see this, and it's wonderful to see the ministry supporting this as well. Yeah. So I appreciate it as well.
So. Yeah. And like as founders, like I think other founders would probably agree, like usually, or not usually, a lot of times we get pitch slapped all the time, and people want us to spend money with them, or people want something from us.
Right.
But this is nice because this is a group where we can actually share real struggles and problems and come up with solutions that are founder view, right? We're coming from the same point of view, not from an angle where someone's trying to sell us on something. So it's a really nice change. And change
that warms my heart. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you so much for that feedback.
Yeah.
And thank you, Jimmy, for meeting with me. This was lovely. I probably could talk for another 2 hours with you. I can't believe how fast that went, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
And take care.
Yeah, thank you for having me.